Stay with me, Akiso Masa Wicho Bajibe. Good morning. Rise and freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Glad to have you here. Today is Wednesday, the 15th of November. How you feeling today? Well, the holidays are they're here. Everybody's ready to celebrate, including Target, who released a new line of products that I think you're all really going to be excited to see. Maybe not so much. Good morning. Don't forget to click that like button as you tune into the show. Make sure you click like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the content that you're seeing today. We'd love to have you come back and join us here every Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Central Time. There they go. Target really outdid themselves this year for Christmas. Posts and wokeness. I thought let's just start the show with the fun and the funny stuff. Why not? Usually I like to end the show that way, but here you can see, I have to describe this for the audio listeners later. Here you can see the nutcracker, the gay nutcracker here on the end with the pride flag. Okay, no problem. Whatever. Nutcrackers are pretty gay anyway, but I guess they had to advertise it. And here you see paraplegic Santa Claus, paraplegic black Santa Claus. Really gets you in the holiday season. So, paraplegic black Santa Claus. Just one question. First of all, how does he even get in the sleigh? Second of all, he must have like some kind of assist ramp to get him in the sleigh. And then second of all, how does he get down the chimney? Very funny. But then again, also, if he has lived at the North Pole for all of his life, he came from Germany. How did he end up being a black guy, being a Moor? I don't know. Maybe he immigrated there during the Crusades. Good morning. Austin Peterson here. Don't forget, you can text the show today, anytime, night or day, Monday through Friday, from 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. The show streams, but I check the voice messages anytime, night or day. I'm sorry, I'm just laughing. It's just freaking hilarious. Black paraplegic Santa Claus. You can text the show again anytime, night or day, 573-319-1586. Nikki Haley comes out and says that we need to force people to register their names to be able to use social media. Yeah. We all knew that was what was going to happen eventually, that she'd call for something like that. It's something that I really look forward to talking about this morning. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Again, 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. You can text the show today. We're going to play that clip of Nikki Haley here. I'm reading this article from the Washington Examiner. I'm going to share with you all as well, by Con Carroll. It says, Haley can only help Trump by attacking DeSantis in Iowa. It's just, they're going to have another Republican presidential debate. And just why?
God!
What is the point?
God, please, no!
Now, I know what it's like when you pick a candidate and you want to see it through to the end. I've been there. I've done that. I know how it feels. Just do me a favor, okay? Just make sure that you don't say or do anything too stupid in supporting a losing candidate, so that after the primaries are over, we can all come together and do what's right for our country, which is to get Joe Biden the hell out of office. Am I right or am I right? I'm right. And you know why I'm right? Because when you read articles like these, you say to yourself, oh, I need to get an expert in here to talk about this, to break it down, so that I'm not just confirming my biases, but somebody who actually knows the numbers and the data and who's worked for the government at the highest offices, in the highest levels as an economist. Vance Ginn will be joining me today to talk about this article, The Surprisingly High Cost of Being a Middle-Class American. Unless you're extremely rich or poor, you probably think of yourself as being part of the middle class. Middle class has an income level that describes people whose annual income is directly in the middle 50% of all income. If you're in middle class, of course, you're not considered to be rich or poor. However, when it comes to middle class income, the question is, of course, how much money is that? But the problem of being middle class in America is that we might actually, if we're middle class, be lower class than we originally thought, because of the economic situation that we're all facing right now. Despite what the White House has been trumpeting as good news on the inflation front, there are still a lot of problems with the economy that need to get sorted out. And in my opinion, the best way to do it is a new administration. I'm going to vote willingly for Donald Trump next year if he's the Republican nominee, which I think is pretty likely at this point. God only knows that I think the best outcome of this is going to be that we get Vivek Ramaswamy as the vice presidential pick. I know. Many of you don't like it. Some of you do. That's just where I'm at. Right now. We're going to talk to Van Skin about that this morning at 7:30 a.m. Central Time. We're also going to talk to him about the new IRS tax brackets. Have you heard about this? Oh, God. I know. It doesn't make you happy talking about taxes, but speaking of being middle class, we're going to talk about that. At 7:51 this morning, an unpaid advertisement, if you will, for this company that I've been working with. Have you heard about Public Square? They're essentially a group of conservatives. They're a conservative business that has started themselves up to offer themselves up as an alternative to woke businesses. Coffee companies like mine and, apparel, candles, all kinds of products. They're essentially trying to be like a conservative version of Amazon, if you will. And they're doing great. And we have really seen some success working with Public Square, Stephanie and I, in our business. So I want to talk to you about them at 7:51 and just kind of talk about how they're doing what I would love to see more people do, which is setting up counter economic businesses as a way to fight against the woke corporations like Target, like Amazon, and others. So I really love what Public Square is doing. If you're a business owner, you've got a small business, I'm going to talk to you this morning at 7:51 about why I think it'd be a good idea for you to work with Public Square. At 8 o'clock this morning, Judge Andrew Napolitano is going to join us. We always love having Judge Nappy on the show. Nappity nap. He's going to join us this morning to talk. I want him to respond to neocon Nikki and her statement about free speech on the internet. And I'd also like to talk to him a little bit about how we can, as libertarians, deal with the spying that goes on around the world, as well as the new Supreme Court ethics rules. So I'm looking forward to talking to Judge Andrew Napolitano this morning at 8 a.m. Central Time. After that, I've got some advice for how you can get lucky. No, not that kind of lucky. How you can get lucky more often. There's this fake Thomas Jefferson quote that people love to share around. It says that I'm a great believer in luck, and I find that the harder I work, that the more that I have. And some people have to really think about that. They don't instantly get it. So maybe if you just think about it for a moment for some people. I'm not calling you stupid. I'm just saying that some people have to think about that. But I read this really great article in the Wall Street Journal yesterday titled How to Get More Lucky. And of course, we're all kind of get your minds out of the gutter. Although it might actually be applicable to that as well. We're going to talk about that this morning at 8:30 a.m. Central Time. If you need more luck in your life, we're going to talk about that. Luck be a lady tonight. First person to guess what that is from, what song that song is from, is going to get a $5 gift certificate to the AP for Liberty shop. What do you say? First person to drop it in the chat who can say what that is, can get a $5 gift card to the AP for Liberty shop. How does that sound? Okay. Let's play the clip from Nikki Haley. All right, let's get away from the gay black paraplegic Santa Clauses from Target for a moment and hear what Nikki Haley's solution to online anti-Semitism is. Take a listen.
When I get into office, the first thing we have to do, social media companies, they have to show America their algorithms. Let us see why they're pushing what they're pushing. The second thing is every person on social media should be verified by their name. First of all, it's a national security threat. When you do that, all of a sudden people have to stand by what they say, and it gets rid of the Russian bots, the Iranian bots, and the Chinese bots. And then you're going to get some civility when people know their name is next to what they say.
Accountability.
And they know their pastor and their family member is going to.
Jeez. How about no? But Joni Rankin, how about yes? Hey, you've got it. See, I knew the musical theater person was going to get it first. Guys and Dolls, that's correct. Now, Frank Sinatra did not sing that song in the movie. Actually, it was, who's the guy? Stella. Oh my God, I'm forgetting his name. Marlon Brando played that role in Nathan Detroit in Guys and Dolls, the movie. but it should have been Frank Sinatra because Marlon Brando couldn't sing, and it was so obvious. But congratulations, Joni Rankin. Remind me after the show, send me a text message or something, Joni, and I'll send you your $5 gift certificate to the shop, which I know you love because you like to buy from the shop. So. Rare Camellia says Haley doubled down on this even further on the Roofless podcast with Comfortably Smug. Oh, God. Could she be any worse? At this point in time, what is the point of Nikki Haley? Why is she even running? Apparently, I'm not the only one who thinks this. I'm reading this article, the Washington Examiner says Haley can only help Trump by attacking DeSantis in Iowa. Yeah, probably true. I mean, if you're a never Trumper at this point and you're the whole point of your existence or like playing in the Republican primary is just to stop Donald Trump, I mean, could you be any more pathetic? Like, listen, if you're supporting Ron DeSantis because you think he's a better candidate, or you're supporting Nikki Haley because you think that she's a better candidate, listen, I get it. I understand. There are still neocons in the Republican Party who like Nikki Haley. There are still, rock solid kind of Ted Cruz style conservatives and Florida Republicans who earnestly believe that Ron DeSantis is a better candidate than Donald Trump. I'm sympathetic to that. But if your primary reason for being involved in the Republican primary is just to stop Donald Trump, you're pathetic. Okay? So I'm reading this article, the Washington Examiner, by Con Carroll. Steffi says liberal women love Nikki Haley. Yes, I know that. No, another good reason for us to avoid her like the plague. Please, no. The enemy of every freedom that we have on God's green earth, liberal women. Nikki Haley says she's running to stop Donald Trump from winning the Republican nomination, but her campaign's decision to attack Ron DeSantis in Iowa can only help Trump win, writes Con Carroll. Haley's campaign announced today that they're spending $10 million, what a waste, on television, radio, and digital advertising in both Iowa and New Hampshire, starting in the first week of December. Boy, you should be spending some of that on podcasts, lady. Investing in New Hampshire makes sense for Haley. Her centrist stance on abortion plays well in a state where DeSantis's 6-week abortion play has turned off many voters. Haley is clearly ahead of DeSantis in almost all of the most recent New Hampshire polls, but Iowa is a different story. DeSantis's pro-life message is succeeding in Iowa, and it offers voters a clear contrast with Trump, who, like Haley, is a moderate on abortion. More importantly, however, when you dig down into the most recent Iowa polls, which do show Haley and DeSantis tied for like way down behind Donald Trump, by the way, you see Haley has no chance to win Iowa because while her supporters would vote for DeSantis if she dropped out, DeSantis's voters would vote for Trump if he dropped out. That's really important. Consider that and mull that around, like swirl that around in your mouth a little bit. Let's consider this, okay? So Haley has no chance to win Iowa because while her supporters would vote for DeSantis if she dropped out, DeSantis's voters would vote for Trump. What does that tell you? That tells you that the people who are behind Nikki Haley are not really true conservatives. They're not really Republicans. You could say, okay, well, I'm not a conservative, you're a libertarian, fine, or I'm not a Republican, I'm a member of the Libertarian Party, that's fine. But consider this, if you are a member of the Republican Party and your goal is not to get a Republican elected next year, what are you doing in the party? What are you doing here, right? And I say this as, again, a new convert to the Republican Party in 2017, so it's not like I really have a lot of clout to say, you're not a real Republican, get out of the party, you rhino, okay? But what I'm saying is it doesn't make sense for someone to be involved in the Republican Party if ultimately it's really just one candidate or bust, and then after that, get out. If that, you're going to help the Democrat win next year? And I think a lot of them are. My accusation, j'accuse, as they say, j'accuse. My accusation is that I think a lot of the Nikki Haley supporters would rather vote for the Democrat next year than vote for Donald Trump. And you see that as this anecdotal evidence. What you see my wife talking about liberal women loving Nikki Haley, you see the New York Times coming out saying Nikki Haley wins the debate. So what does that show you? That shows that DeSantis people and Trump people are copacetic, but that Nikki Haley people are the odd people out. And I think it's a good sign in some ways because it shows just how much clout that the neocons have lost. within the Republican Party. And it shows that after the primary nomination is over, that there will be even more, I think, a shrinking influence of Nikki Haley voters if they decide to go all never Trump and join with the Bill Kristols of the world and to vote Democrat, and the Jennifer Rubins of the Washington Post, right? These are neocons who were members of the Republican Party before Donald Trump took office, and then they quit the GOP and they've gone to the Democrats and they're supporting Joe Biden, right? So that's where the neocons have gone, which is fascinating, of course, because if you look at the history of the neocons from the 1970s until today, neocons actually used to be Trotskyite leftists, communists, Marxists, leftists, Democrats, social democrats. Neocons used to be that. But then, of course, they became what they call mugged by reality. They joined the Republican Party. They had a lot of influence on George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush, of course. And then we find ourselves where we're at today, where Donald Trump destroyed the neocons, drove them out of the party, and now they've fled back to the Democratic Party where they belong. It's a fascinating, interesting conversation to have, to talk about the philosophies of these major candidates. Donald Trump, where is he coming from? Ron DeSantis, where is he coming from? But then you have Nikki Haley, right? And her supporters and her followers come from an entirely different breed. I mean, it really is the Rockefeller wing of the Republican Party. If you go back to 1963, 1964, right, the Barry Goldwater election year, I mean, that was a battle between the establishment elite wing of the Republican Party. It was a Rockefeller he was running against. Somebody correct me on my history if I'm wrong about this one, because the nomination between Barry Goldwater and the losing candidate was very much about the grassroots. I mean, Barry Goldwater was the grassroots conservative Republican in that race. And it was him versus, I believe, a Rockefeller Republican at the time. And it was much contested because it was all about the elite establishment of the Republican Party versus the grassroots. And of course, Barry Goldwater won the nomination that year and went on to lose the election, the general election, which I blame not necessarily on Barry Goldwater so much as the disdain for the Vietnam War that had been growing, as well as I think that people, when John F. Kennedy was murdered, I really think that the country largely felt sorry for the Democrats and felt more sympathy for them. And LBJ, of course, being the vice president of John F. Kennedy, I think that people handed a landslide victory to Lyndon Johnson. And Barry Goldwater his rhetoric was more interventionist, more warmongering towards Vietnam. My father actually tells a story that we love to hear in our family about when he was in the Army and he went and saw Barry Goldwater speak. I think he was in Kentucky at the time, Fort Knox. And so they got to leave off of the base to go hear Barry Goldwater give a speech. And Goldwater, of course, was a veteran of World War II himself, and he was much more, I won't say warmongering, but my dad tells the story like this, that he went to go see Barry Goldwater speak, and he's in the Army, and he hears Barry Goldwater say, "We're going to bomb the hell out of Hanoi." And he's like, "I'm not vote for that guy," because obviously he didn't want to go to Vietnam and get killed, and thankfully he did not. But my dad always says that it was a mistake not to vote for Barry Goldwater. He says that was the last time that he voted for a Democrat. He voted for Lyndon Johnson. Can you believe it, Dad? What the hell? But then, of course, he voted Republican for the rest of his life. Love to hear your thoughts on things like this. Send us a text at 573-319-1586. Again, you can text the show. Let us know what's on your mind at 573-319-1586. You guys want to see something funny real quick before we move on to more stories? We got Van Skin coming on here in about 10 minutes. Okay, here we go. This made me laugh yesterday. I'm gonna have to refresh it because this is unfortunately how Instagram is. I can't just have it queued up.
Ron DeSantis, High Heels University.
Vivek Ramaswamy, Donald Trump Fan Club.
Nikki Birdbrain Haley, Bush War Crime Institute.
Tim Scott, I'm just happy to be here.
Chris Christie, Golden Corral State.
Golden Corral State. All right, can we just watch that one more time so we can get all the good jokes here? I mean, obviously Tim Scott's out of the race here, but this made me laugh. How the Republican debate intro should have gone.
Ron DeSantis, High Heels University.
High Heels University, yes.
Vivek Ramaswamy, Donald Trump Fan Club.
Good.
Nikki Birdbrain Haley, Bush War Crime Institute.
Tim Scott, I'm just happy to be here.
Chris Christie, Golden Corral State.
You guys, don't you just love the Wake Up America show? Don't I give you guys the best content, the best clips? Don't I make you laugh, keep you informed, give you awesome guests? Then do me a favor. Will you click that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't been watching the Wake Up America show for some time? If today may be your very first time here, subscribe to the channel. Come back and join us every Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time, so that you can get more great content like that. I feel like that is definitely worth a little bit of support. Don't you feel that way? Over Bentley says, how is Tim Scott out, but Chris Christie isn't? Yes, I'm glad you guys are all getting a good laugh out of that and enjoying it. I think I've got one more really funny clip for you this morning. Oh, yeah, these deep fakes, they are getting so good. I posted one of Obama the other day, but I found this one of Ron DeSantis. Take a look at this.
Spaghetti
Look
for
at this.
like a year or 2 years. I only ate spaghetti. And then I was just like so sick, and my hair actually stopped growing, and went to the doctor, and the doctor was like, you actually are malnourished from not eating vegetables or meat and just eating spaghetti for 2 years. So, but yeah, because that spaghetti is the only thing though, like in every city, it's good. So I was only eating spaghetti for like a year or 2 years. I only ate spaghetti. And then I was just like so sick, and my hair actually stopped growing, and went to the doctor, and the doctor was like, you actually are malnourished from not eating vegetables or meat and just eating spaghetti.
What on God's green earth? These deepfakes are getting so good. And I know most of you probably saw this clip yesterday, but it's still, we got to share it. This is a senator from Oklahoma who offers to fight a Teamster during a Senate hearing, and Bernie Sanders has to break him up. Take a look.
Like he's self-made. Sir, I wish he was in the truck with me when I was building my plumbing company. Myself and my wife was running the office, because I sure remember working pretty hard and long hours. Pretends like he's self-made. What a clown. Fraud. Always has been, always will be. Quit the tough guy act in these Senate hearings. You know where to find me. Any place, anytime, cowboy. Sir, this is a time, this is a place. If you want to run your mouth, we can be two consenting adults. We can finish it here.
Okay, that's fine. Perfect.
You want to do it now?
I'd love to do it right now.
Well, stand your butt up then.
You stand your butt up.
Oh, hold on.
Big
Oh,
guy.
oh, stop it.
Is that your solution every
Hold
poll?
it. No, sit down. Sit down.
Okay.
You know, you're a United States Senator. Sit down.
Active.
Oh, okay.
Sit down, please.
All right.
Can I respond, Mr.
Hold
Chairman?
it. Hold it. If
Hold
we
on.
can't, no,
This is
I have
what
the
he
mic.
said.
I'm sorry.
This is
Hold
what
it.
he said.
You'll have your time.
Okay.
Can I respond?
Oh, no, you can't. This is a hearing.
Oh my God. Yes, Eric Wilson. I remember you did send me that, by the way. Thank you very much, Eric. Good morning. Mutual combat. Let him go. I agree. Dude, you got no, that's not fake, Stephanie. Which was fake? The Ron DeSantis thing was obviously fake, but no, this was actually real. This happened yesterday. I mean, can you imagine back in the day when they actually did go fisticuffs or do duels and stuff? What wasn't there that famous case on the Senate floor where Sumner, or was it Charles Sumner? It was like right before the Civil War when the tensions between the two parties were at a fever pitch, and somebody like beat another senator with a cane on the floor of the Senate. Honestly, you know what? Bring it back. Bring it back. Take me back. I love like seeing Bernie Sanders where he's like getting in between
Office, because I sure remember working pretty hard and long hours.
Did this actually
Pretends
happen?
like he's self-made. What a
2, 3,
clown.
yes, it did happen.
Fraud. Always has been, always will be. Quit the tough guy act in these Senate hearings. You know where to find me.
Burnt Toast Space Girlfriend says Golden Corral steak. Yes, very good. Thank you, Burnt Toast Space Girl.
This is a place. If you want to run your mouth, we can be two consenting adults. We can finish it here.
Okay, that's fine. Perfect.
You want to do it now?
I'd love to do it right now.
Well, stand your butt up then.
Love to
You
do it
stand
right
your
now.
butt up.
Oh,
You
hold
stick
it.
your
No,
butt
stop
up.
it.
Is that your solution every
Hold
poll?
it. No, sit down.
Sit down.
Okay. You know, you're a United States Senator.
See,
Sit
this
down.
is the problem, right? We haven't, not enough people are getting beaten until they're humble enough to actually serve the people of the United States. Am I wrong about this one? I feel as if we need to bring back duels. Can I get a yay in the chat? How many people think we need to bring back duels? There we go. Clementine, see, I got Sumner right. Sumner was attacked by Preston Brooks. Thank you, Clementine. You're the man. See, another reason to love the Wake Up America show. Not only are you getting some of the funniest, most cutting-edge clips and news stories, right? And you're getting a good laugh, but you're also getting a little history lesson as well. But it is time for us to move on because guess what? Vance Ginn is coming up next. He's an economist who used to work for Donald Trump when he was in the White House. Says being middle class ain't what it used to be. It's a little bit lower than middle class. So I guess it makes me low class? No. High class. AP. When we return on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Goose Lodge in Jamestown, Kansas, your home away from home. Choose the comfort and privacy of our individual rooms, each equipped with its very own locking door and en-suite facilities. Or bring the whole family and make memories in our communal space. Snuggle up on our plush recliners or share a meal around the dining table that comfortably seats 8. Our kitchen is armed with everything you need, from a microwave to a full-size fridge. For a bird's eye view, book the Eagle's Nest. Enjoy the privacy, storage space, and its very own toilet and shower. For just $450 a night, reserve the entire lodge. Perfect for reunions or retreats, accommodating up to 8 guests. And remember, Snow Goose Lodge is a haven for kids and dogs alike. So bring the whole family. Book your stay now and get 20% off your first booking using the code WAKEUP.
Expanse of time, a year might seem like a mere moment, but oh, what a year it's been. In September 2022, Austin and Stephanie Peterson embarked on a journey to wake up America. They began humbly, with just 20 souls tuning in, learning, listening, and though challenges arose, like the looming shadow of YouTube demonetization, their spirit never waned. And now, thanks to you, thousands rise with the sun to join them, to listen, to engage, to be a part of a community. So here's to you, and to Wake Up America, for memories shared, for friends made, for the journey ahead, and for never, ever forgetting to rise and freedom. Happy anniversary.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message. Believe me, Austin Peterson is the best. He's got the greatest Wake Up America show I've ever seen. Whenever I tune in the mornings and watch the live stream, let me tell you, he has got the absolute best content. I love his guests. It's just a total blast to watch, and I highly endorse and recommend the Wake Up America show. It's terrific, believe me.
I'm a public defender.
I am a public defender.
I'm proud to be a public defender.
80% of Americans accused of a crime will get appointed a public defender.
Everybody from a speeding ticket to capital murder.
For every dollar we spend on public defenders, we spend $3 on prosecutors.
Public defenders have to do pretty much everything on their own.
Social workers, counselors.
Investigating is another piece of it.
The average public defender holds 300 cases annually.
You never feel like there's enough time.
Public defenders have health issues all the time.
A lot of people give up and say, I can't do this work anymore.
Gideon's Promise trains, mentors, and supports public defenders.
There are a lot of people who say that they would not still be public defenders, but for Gideon's Promise.
It's fueled me to continue on in this fight.
Gideon's Promise has changed.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericashow.com. We're glad and thankful to have you here. We got so much awesome content for you. I just can't wait. I've got tons of clips, more great guests. The Wake Up America show streams live every Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Central Time. So make sure you click like and subscribe to the channel and come back and join us every day on your work day to find out what's going on in the world, have a few laughs, and of course, stay informed about what's happening in the world of economic freedom and personal liberty. Also, just a quick reminder, starting yesterday, we made some changes to the Founding Flavors Coffee Shop, which if you haven't already, today is a great day to get your orders in, especially if you're thinking about getting them in before Christmas time. If you're gonna do gifts of coffee, today's a great day to make an order. For those of you who are already on the coffee club and are doing monthly supplies, guess what? You're going to see the surprise when you get your next order. So if you haven't tried the coffee yet, today's a great day to get your order in at ap4libertyshop.com. That's AP, the number 4, ap4libertyshop.com. Go ahead and check it out. Get yourself one of each and use the bundles page. If you're going to buy more than one, you'll save some money that way. And share some with your friends, family, and neighbors. They'll love you for it. Okay, well, what does it mean to be middle class? Got a lot of economic topics to discuss with my next guest, Vance Ginn. He is formerly a top economist under the Trump White House, worked for the Government Accountability Office. I always get that name wrong. Maybe just bring him in here and he can correct me. Tell me why I'm wrong. What's up, Vance? How you doing, brother?
Hey, Austin, it's good to see you, man. It was OMB, Office of Management and Budget.
Yeah, I sometimes get OMB and the GOA confused a little bit, but there are actually
there's so many acronyms going on.
There are for sure. We've got a lot to talk about this morning, Vance. I want to talk to you about the IRS's new tax brackets. I want to talk to you about the shutdown aversion, the bill that's going to the Senate. And I want to talk to you about what it means to be middle class. Why don't you just pick a topic based on the order of you think that they're the most important and you'd like to discuss, and take it away.
All right. Sounds good, Austin. Well, I think for your audience, they may be interested to know how much they're going to pay in taxes next year. So we might start there. So every year after the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the Trump tax cuts, if you will, they started inflating, indexing, if you will, those brackets, each one of the brackets for how much you pay in taxes. And there's a dollar amount. That amount now is inflation and adjusted with CPI, change CPI inflation. And they recently announced what those bracket rates are going to be. So the lowest rate, there are now 7 brackets, okay? 7 different tax rates that you're going to pay. It's a progressive marginal income tax. So as your income goes up, you pay higher tax rates. That's the way the Democrats and liberals love to do it. I'd rather see a flat tax if we're going to have an income tax at all, but this is the way we have it. The lowest rate is 10% for incomes for single individuals with incomes of $11,600 or less, or $23,200, basically doubling that for married couples. And that goes all the way up. You have 12%, 22%, 24%, 32%, 35%. Those are the different tax rates. The highest one is 37%, which will now be on incomes for $609,350 more going into tax year 24. And for married couples, it's $731,200. So you kind of find where you're at on each one of these brackets. And basically you go up to that income level paying that tax rate. Then you move to the next one, you pay that tax rate for the additional incomes at the margin. And so what this means is that it's going to help some of us, right? It helps a little bit by not moving into a new bracket by paying higher tax rates. Your income will actually be adjusted for some of that. Of course, inflation is still a problem, though. I mean, just this week it came out at 3.2%. So this is adjusting it for the past, not necessarily what's going to happen in the year of 2024. So you're already falling behind as soon as these adjustments are made. But, Austin, I guess there's some relief that we can talk about.
So there is actually a silver lining in the cloud, is what you're saying?
Yeah, there's a little silver lining there.
Okay, well, that's interesting. So, most people, in this country, right, consider themselves to be middle class.
Mm-hmm.
So, would you say that this provides some tax relief for middle class citizens? Your thoughts?
Well, it's a good question, Austin. I don't know if it provides, quote unquote relief. It does mean that you would be paying more than you would if those brackets weren't adjusted for inflation. But it doesn't put more money in your pocket. And that's really what I think middle class, when they consider relief, they would want to see more money in their pocket. That's not going to be the case. And in fact, through the Inflation Reduction Act and some of these other measures by the Biden administration and Congress, they've been raising taxes. And so this is not a good situation when you already have inflation, you have more money coming out of your pocket. You have a situation where retirement is also being depleted as people are going through their savings and everything else. And so this is not the type of relief that I think we need, which is less government spending at the end of the day, and then lower taxes.
No kidding. Certainly, I think everybody who watches the Wake Up America show would agree with you on that. I shared with you this article yesterday, the surprisingly high cost of being a middle-class American. And the article, the bottom line is saying being middle class is almost more of a mindset than anything else, as it refers to your annual income. Politicians and the media often talk about middle class values, but it isn't like we get a certificate if you enter or exit the middle class, right? We're really talking about a financial situation, right? But the article's point here is essentially that your net worth should never be confused with your self-worth. It sounds like the kind of thing that somebody would tell people who are struggling, who are going through a crisis, to be like, oh, well, don't think about the fact that you're losing money and that you're getting more poor. Just think about your self-worth, right? It just sounds like the kind of financial guru nonsense that you'd see on TikTok. What do you think?
Yeah. No, I think you're right, Austin. Yeah, I think it is. We've long talked about the middle class. We needed the middle class to grow and everything else. I think, or maybe not you and I, but just in general, that's been the talking points that's been out there. I've always had a little bit of problem with that, Austin, because people don't stay in the middle class. In fact, what we've seen over time is that people have been moving up the income ladder, going more into the upper class, if you will. And really what that means is higher incomes. And that's really what we want more people to do at the end of the day. And so if you put it into a bracket, and right now this article says between $43,350 for a household to $130,000, you would be considered middle class income. I don't know at $43,000 if you're in California or New York, if that's really going to be middle class. Maybe in Texas or maybe in Missouri or something like that. But in a lot of places of the country, it will not be. 130,000, that might be closer to middle class, if you think about it. But some people, I've read an article here recently, Austin, that said that you need $100,000 a year just to own a home almost anywhere in America because of how much home prices have went up and property taxes and everything else over the last couple of years under this Biden inflation. And so when you look at these numbers, they don't really tell me a whole lot, but I do think that many people are struggling. And so maybe that $43,350 is a key cutoff that says, you know what, those are lower incomes. They're really struggling right now. They're getting hit hard. But we also got to put into place, my Let People Prosper show on my podcast, I had U.S. Senator Phil Gramm on recently, former United States Senator Phil Gramm, and he has this great book, The Myth of American Inequality. And he talks about how with all the handouts that are given out with like TANF and food stamps and Medicaid and all those other things, when you start adding that up, those individuals with the lower income are actually getting more in benefits of about $50,000 a year than someone making income. And so we have to be careful about the redistribution and the middle class and upper class and all these different names that we're putting on them, because what that signals to government is that they should redistribute that income from the upper income people to lower income. And that ends up being a large mistake that doesn't go to those people who ultimately need it the most. And in fact, distorts the labor market by incentivizing them not to work. And so there are a lot of repercussions by looking at some of these numbers. And so while I would take some of this with a grain of salt, I think it does reflect some of what's happening with a lot of people across the country. Let's make sure that inflation comes down. And we know how to do that, Austin. That's how by cutting the Fed's balance sheet, stopping all this money creation.
I'm going to disagree with you on that again.
Okay. Yeah.
I saw the Wall Street Journal was trumpeting, and the stock markets yesterday were excited about the inflation numbers.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is it irrational exuberance in your opinion?
Well, coming at it just honestly, and that's what you and I always do with the audience here is, 3.2% is better than the 9% it was last year. So we can give them some credit for that. It was down from the 3.7% the month before. These are year over year numbers. And if you look just over month in October, it was actually flat, 0%. Now, we also need to look at is average weekly earnings, how much they have increased across the United States over the last year. And it was up 3.2%, the same rate as the inflation rate. So that means zero growth in the purchasing power of each one of your dollars. That's not a good situation. And when you look at the core, so exclude food and energy, which all of us buy food and energy, but they like to look at this, it was up 4% year over year. So that means that your average weekly earnings are actually going down year over year. And it was up 0.2% month over month. So I think that there are some benefits to this. Some people are saying that the Federal Reserve should continue their pause. They paused twice now from raising their federal funds rate, the overnight lending rate between banks. It's now 5.25 to 5.5%. They last raised it in July. Some are saying they won't do it again in December. They probably won't. But Austin, they've been distorting these interest rates and the money supply and all this in markets and just in general over the last 3+ years. Really, it's been for a lot longer than that, maybe since 1913 when the Fed was created, but especially over the last couple of years. And so we're still going to see this money trickling through the economy. Maybe that's really the trickle down economics that's out there is what the Fed tries to do. Let's give these financial companies and the investors, let's give them a lot of money to work with in the economy. And hopefully that trickles down to Main Street. But unfortunately, it stays in Wall Street, which may go back to our other conversation about the middle class. Who's really creating more of this class struggle? It's Congress's overspending, and it's the Fed's money printing, and that has put us in this situation. And so it's an unfortunate situation. I think there were some good highlights from this inflation number, but there's still a long way to go. I think we still got too much inflationary pressures out there.
Good stuff. If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, good morning. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. We're glad to have you here. Click that like button and subscribe to the channel if it's your first time watching us today. We'd love to have you come back and join us every Monday through Friday here on the show. I'm speaking to Vance Ginn. We're talking to him about the state of the economy, inflation, and now we're going to talk a little bit about the debt ceiling deal. One, what's your impression of the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson? And two, your thoughts on the bill that was passed and now heads to the Senate today to avert the government shutdown?
Yeah, Austin. Speaker Mike Johnson. He's from Louisiana. He's kind of the Shreveport, Louisiana area. I do some work in Louisiana with the Pelican Institute there, another free market think tank that's there, a great group. And from what I understand, and talking to a lot of people, Mike Johnson is the real deal. I mean, he's a good guy. He's got a lot of, if you look at his website on his representative website, not the speaker's website, he's got 7 principles of being a conservative. And it talks a lot like you and I do. And more for classical liberal, free markets, free trade, all the things that we like to talk about. He talks a good game. Now, we'll see if that continues as speaker, because, a lot of the political wills, a lot of the horse trading and lobbying and all the things that happen up there can kind of change you. For what I understand, that has not changed him much as a representative, but this is a whole different situation of being in leadership. Basically running the House in many ways, and we'll see how that works out. Now, he was able to get a lot of these conservatives and free market folks behind him, like Thomas Massey. I mean, he basically got everybody to vote for him. Okay, so he's heading in a good direction. But let's see what happens over time. I'm going to say it though. I'm a little concerned with this new budget deal they're coming up with. It's called a continuing resolution. The federal government will not have enough funds to continue to run. They'll basically shut down, certain parts of government. We shouldn't say to shut down, but certain parts of government will shut down. November 17th. So on Friday is whenever their current budget runs out. The CR they passed, a month or so ago. And so what they've done with this CR that the House passed yesterday was that they're going to make some of it is going to continue until January 19th and some of it until February 2nd. Basically just saying, look, let's pass a budget that's going to continue funding for the next couple of months. Let's get us through the new year and Thanksgiving and Christmas, and then we'll come back. And then we'll talk about it again as they start their next budget cycle. But what's interesting about all this, Austin, is that the final tally was 336 in favor and 95 opposed, with 127 Republicans joining 209 Democrats to pass the bill. Now, that shows some bipartisanship, which you need. But at the same time, why are there more Democrats voting for this than the Republicans? And a lot of Republicans said, you know what, I'm not going to vote for this. And so that also indicates to me that more of your Freedom Caucus folks and stuff like that were like, you know what, this is going to be too much spending at the end of the day. We're not doing anything new. Now, from Mike Johnson's point, I think his idea is like, look, we're not coming and increasing the budget a whole bunch like what McCarthy and others wanted to do before. This is a better deal. But I think there are still some concerns that maybe we're not learning the lessons of excess spending, and we're going to continue that trend. So I'm a little bit cautiously optimistic about Mike Johnson in general, but I think that there might be some more reforms that we need with the budget, of course, to get this deficit under control.
Good to know. Vance, one last question for you here before we let you go, and I also want to give you a chance to plug your work. Vance, if your old boss, Donald Trump, comes back into the White House next year, you're going to go back to work for him?
Well, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens and what the situation looks like. I am interested in serving my country, and I think we need good people that have sound principles, sound values in those positions, because if not, who else is going to do it? It kind of goes back to Reagan, if not now, when, if not us, who? And so, I would hope that whether it's me or you or others who get shaking his head, but others who get called, that we need to be in those situations when necessary. At the same time, I enjoy my life here in Texas. I'm having a great time doing all the things that I do. And so I can always, from afar, provide some information and data and policy recommendations along the way, some consulting. That's a lot of what I do nowadays. But I really hope that we could turn this country around. I know there was a lot of talk about, make America great again. We have that slogan for a while. Then build back better, I guess, is the slogan now. And what's going to happen next? I think that there are so many issues, Austin, that I know you talk a lot about. I listen to your show often, is that, look at what's happened in Israel and Hamas and that situation in Palestine and everything. Then you see what's happening in Ukraine and Russia and all the money that's being spent. But at the same time, we've got a lot of problems here that we need to be addressing without getting into all these foreign conflicts and everything else. And from a more classical liberal libertarian perspective, I think that really has to be a focus of where we're heading in the future, without getting into this neocon and ways of basically infiltrating a lot of the rest of the world. While at the same time understanding the realities that are on the ground of the unfortunate loss of life and everything that's happening.
America first, essentially. It sounds like that's what you're trying to articulate. Vance, where can people find out more about your work?
Austin, so vanceagain.com. That's where I have a lot of my resources there. I have the Let Fuel Prosper show. It's a podcast. I bring on a lot of guests to talk about the economy and other things that are happening. I also have This Week's Economy that comes out every Friday on that show to talk about all the top insights. A lot of the stuff that we just talked about here. And so I think those would be the best places. I also have a Substack at vanceagain.substack.com, where I provide all this information in my newsletter. And then, as always, you can find me on x.com. I'm always posting the latest information, trying to give trusted insights, from a way that people can understand.
Vance, you're one of the best in the business for sure. Thank you for getting up so early and being so generous with your time today. I hope everybody takes the time to follow you online. Appreciate you very much. Have a good day.
You too, Austin. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
They need to verify every single person on their outlet, and I want it by name. Because when
what about Smug? Does he qualify?
I've provided them with my government.
If Smug is on your driver's license, then, and look, you can put Smug in parentheses, but I want everybody's name. They need to verify.
Speaking of neocons, that's Nikki Haley doubling down on her comments that she stated, where she says that everybody who wants to be on social media should have to register their identity.
When I get into office, the first thing we have to do, social media accounts, social media companies, they have to show America their algorithms. Let us see why they're pushing what they're pushing. The second thing is every person on social media should be verified by their name. That's, first of all, it's a national security threat. When you do that, all of a sudden people have to stand by what they say, and it gets rid of the Russian bots, the Iranian bots, and the Chinese bots. And then you're going to get some civility when people know their name is next to what they say.
Accountability.
And they know their pastor and their family member is going to see it. It's going to help our kids, and it's going to help our country.
Well, that's just blatantly unconstitutional, isn't it, Nikki? And for those of you who may not remember from history class, the Federalist Papers, which led to the adoption of the U.S. Constitution here in the United States, were written by the founding fathers pseudonymously, 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 pseudonym, pseudonymously, 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 synonym rolls. Good morning. Good morning. I'm Austin Peterson. If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, we're glad and thankful to have you here on the program. Make sure that you click like, subscribe to the channel. We'd love to have you come back and join us here every Monday through Friday on the Wake Up America show. And of course, you can text the show anytime, Monday through Friday. Well, actually 24/7. You know, I check these text messages even on the weekend. So if you want to send me a text, you can at 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. And I'd love to hear from you today. Again, one more time, the text lines are open at 573-319-1586. Quest Fanning texted in, said, I've long thought of 150 to 300 grand as upper middle class. Has to be higher by now. Yes, for sure. Corey and Callie says, so your thoughts on Section 230 AP? I actually am a supporter of Section 230, and I don't think that we should overturn it. Rare Camellia on Nikki Haley says, God, she is so stupid. They're very true. Kermode Bear says, only bears are good. Everything else is good, too, I guess, because it is food. Very funny, Kermode Bear. Good morning, Floby Tenderson. Nice to see you all here today. Again, Studio 314 dropping that text line for you if you'd like to have your voice heard on the show. We've got a little bit less than 10 minutes until Judge Andrew Napolitano comes and joins us on the show today. I want to talk to you about something else very briefly for just a few minutes. Let me see if I can pull it up here. So this is what I decided to start this conversation about. You can see here's Target apparently not learning their lessons, right? And they've got the gay nutcracker out this season, which, you know, doesn't bother me. I don't care about homosexual products. But this one really made me laugh, where you have Santa Claus, paraplegic black Santa Claus this year at Target, which was anybody looking for this? Did anybody ask for black paraplegic Santa Claus? It's just a little odd, don't you think? But it just reminds me why we need to start creating alternative economic platforms for us to be able to ensure that we are spending our money where it matters, that we keep our money within the movement and that we're not spending money on people who hate us, which is why I've really been excited to talk to you. I'm excited to talk to you about my friends over at Public Square. And this is not an advertisement for them. They have no idea that I'm talking to them. But I have a very limited advertising budget that I can use for my website, apforlibertyshop.com. And I decided this year to spend all of my advertising budget, which again, minuscule compared to what everybody else can spend. But in the holiday season, you got to spend money to make money. I decided to spend my money with Public Square. One, because the audience of conservatives and libertarians over there is definitely the kind of audience that would be interested in the kind of things that we sell at AP for Liberty Shop, but also, too, because they share our values. And these are the people who I think have the best shot at becoming real, legitimate competitors. Maybe not to Amazon so much, because I would think that it would be hard to have that kind of international pull with a more ideological group. But I can see them having a lot of pull nationally, and they are publicly traded on the stock exchange. And I've been impressed with what they've been able to do. Publicsquare.com, you can see they have our shop on their website. And then they have other shops as well. You can actually buy stuff from apforlibertyshop.com through Public Square. Obviously, I recommend you actually buy it from apforlibertyshop.com directly, but we have seen people, because they take a little percentage, obviously, which is fine, but because I'd rather make the sale and make a little bit less money than not make the sale at all, right? I know a lot of people who watch the show are small business people as well. And if you're not listed on Public Square, you definitely should. This is I think they've got a really great format here for how they run their site. You can see little George there with our Calvin the Coolest President book, and we've got our t-shirts and mugs. I made this really cool 1776 copper vacuum insulated bottle. So really good for hot or cold drinks with 1776 picture that I made there. And of course, our 3D printed killdozer. And our keychains, 90s style Elon Musk shirts. Stephanie actually designed these pistol leggings. I designed the Abolish the FBI shirt. There's our coffee right there. Adams is Patriotic Perk. But we do see sales from this because they just launched this store that's a competitor to Amazon this last week. And I'm really impressed with how well they have organized themselves and have managed to turn this little shop that they've created into a powerhouse of sales. So if you are a small business owner and you have like a merchandise shop or you do any kind of e-commerce or anything like that, check out our sexy bikinis. Then I highly recommend that you visit Public Square and you get your business on Public Square, because we have actually seen sales coming from Public Square and it's been good for our business. So support those people who support your values right there. What do you think of my synthwave awesome founding fathers picture that I made? Patriotic gear, freedom apparel, and rare coffees. Hell yes. Give it up to Public Square. Also, again, a reminder, do not forget, get those coffee orders in starting today, because we have got a surprise for those of you who have already ordered our coffee and who are used to ordering our coffee, or maybe you're already on our monthly subscription for coffee. Here's the thing. There has been a change in the coffee. You're still getting the same delicious coffee beans, but there is something special and new and different that will be coming. If you ordered yesterday, and going forward. So if you order any coffee today from apforlibertyshop.com, other than Martha's Mint, like our regular coffees, you're going to notice a change in your coffees. So make sure you visit apforlibertyshop.com today, make a coffee order, and get that in today, because you're going to see a nice little wonderful surprise. Surprise, surprise. Surprise, surprise. All right. No, you don't get a free AR-15, says Amren article narrations. Very funny, though. Judge Napolitano is going to respond to neocon Nikki and her push to try and make all of us register our driver's licenses when we go to be on social media. I don't think we should even have driver's licenses. When we get back on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. It was 1946. A battle was fought, not overseas, but right here on American soil. The Battle of Athens, an intense struggle against election fraud and for the rights promised by our founding fathers. Driven by the Second Amendment, ordinary citizens stood tall and fought back. Help us expose this momentous battle of integrity and bravery. Your support can make a difference. Visit givesendgo.com/bleedamerican and pledge your support, because we believe in the power of truth, the strength of unity, and the spirit of we the people. Let us not forget, we bleed American.
Fire.
Hello, this is Barack Obama, and let me tell you why Austin Petersen stinks, and you should never pay attention to anything that he has to say. First of all, he's a libertarian, and we all know libertarians are idiots. They don't realize how important government is to everything that we do. I recently became aware that Austin has opened up a libertarian shop at apforlibertyshop.com. Now, I'm asking you as a personal favor to me that you never ever visit apforlibertyshop.com With all of the great Liberty merchandise there, the last thing that we need to do is to get people spreading this message around the country, because then they might start thinking that they don't need government. And that's the last thing that good Democrats like us want. So if you love democracy, like me, and hate freedom, then don't visit AP for Liberty Shop. Like I said, whatever you do, do not visit apforlibertyshop.com. I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.
They need to verify every single person on their outlet and I want it by name. Because when
what about Smug? Does he qualify?
I've provided them with my government.
If Smug is on your driver's license, then, and look, you can put Smug in parentheses, but I want everybody's name. They need to verify.
There she is. She wants everybody's name. Good morning. I'm Austin Peterson. Let's give her a round of boos. What do you say? Neocon Nikki strikes again. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupamericashow.com. Click that like button, subscribe to the channel. Come back and join us every Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Central Time. So, Nikki Haley, running for president of the United States, says that if some people say some hurtful things online, that's the reason that we should have the government confirm everybody's driver's license that wants to use social media. Probably one of the worst ideas I've heard this year. The kind of thing that you'd expect to hear from Democrats. She's running as a Republican, though. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But for things like this, we need a hero of liberty to come in here and fight for what's right. He joins us every Wednesday here on the show. He has his own explosively growing podcast, one of my greatest inspirations. I've read all of his books, listened to every lecture he's ever given. His name is Judge Andrew Napolitano, host of the Judging Freedom podcast, and read his weekly column at judgenap.com. Judge Andrew Napolitano joining us now. Good morning, Judge.
Austin, good morning. It's always a pleasure to be with you. One of my regular guests, my tent pole, up there in ratings, Scott Ritter, refers to her as the female Lindsey Graham, and basically said, if you want to see your grandchildren, don't vote for Nikki Haley because she'll send your children off to fight wars. She, like Lindsey Graham, has called for bombing Tehran. Now this other nonsense about assaulting the freedom of speech by insinuating the government in the process of speaking. This is obviously somebody that doesn't understand the Constitution. I mean, these are dangerous times, Austin. The wealthy Republicans have begun to desert Ron DeSantis. These are Republicans that don't want Donald Trump and have begun to go to her. It's going to be Nikki Haley versus Donald Trump. I don't know how this is going to end up. I don't know who would be more authoritarian. But she has no understanding for the freedom of speech. if she thinks that the government can play any role whatsoever in speech, and she has no understanding for the restraints on the federal government and the treaties the United States has signed, which the United States wrote, the Geneva Convention and the United Nations Charter, which prohibit things like attacking Tehran because they're saber-rattling Israel. She will kill people and destroy the Constitution in the process.
When she says that she thinks that people who are online would have to register themselves and not be able to speak anonymously, she goes against hundreds of years of constitutional history. She essentially speaks out against the authors of the Federalist Papers themselves.
Yes, you have an absolute right to wear a mask in public, either a literal mask or a digital mask. You have an absolute right to think as you wish. When I say absolute, I mean there's no restraint on it. Think as you wish, say what you think, and offer what you say, whether you call it publishing in the old-fashioned way, putting it in a pamphlet or a poster or a book, or in the more modern way, digitally. And the whole purpose of the First Amendment, I think I'm quoting my column this week. The whole purpose of the which is a paraphrase of the Supreme Court. The whole purpose of the First Amendment is to keep the government out of the business of speech. Out of the business of speech. All government, federal, state, local, legislative, executive, and judicial, has nothing to do with speech. All innocuous speech is absolutely protected, and all speech is innocuous when there is time for more speech to challenge it. Even speech which is hateful, even speech which advocates violence, all of this is protected. If we have the right to pursue happiness, we have the right to say whatever the hell we want.
I love seeing
this is really under my skin. I'll tell you another speech-related issue that's under my skin. Under the Merrick Garland, Chris Wray, DOJ, FBI, in the old days, like 2 years ago, when the government wanted the contents of your iPhone, they simply sent a subpoena to your telecom and service provider, and they got it. Today, they will stop you on the street and steal it from you. Whether you're Mike Lindell, the founder of MyPillow, whether you're a member of Congress who's challenging the 2020 election, or whether you're the liberal Democratic mayor of the city of New York who's blaming the immigration problem on the president, they will just take it from you. Boy, if I were the head of that NYPD detail and the FBI came up and said, stand aside, and they touched the mayor, I would have arrested the FBI and called for a SWAT team backup.
Judge, do you think that was politically motivated because Eric Adams spoke out against the administration?
I don't know the facts in the case. It is rare that a big city mayor, a liberal Democrat, an African-American, a person whose personal history is up from the bootstraps in the ghetto to become a captain in the police department, a guy that I disagree with on almost all aspects of his mayoralty, would be challenged like this and humiliated publicly by the federal government when it's headed by another liberal Democrat. To me and to the Supreme Court, money is speech. It doesn't matter where the money for the campaign came from. But the John McCains of the world enacted legislation making it a felony to accept money from a foreign government. So some campaigns use straw people, and it is a felony to use a straw person, and it is a felony to conspire to do this. So under the law, technically, there may be a crime. I would like to think the FBI has more serious things to worry about, but the FBI works for the DOJ, and the DOJ works for the president.
I am willing to believe that this was politically motivated, that if Eric Adams hadn't said what he had said about the White House, that they wouldn't be cracking down on him and embarrassing him in public by confiscating his materials, that now, while we may not be able to prove something like that because of the shrouded secrecy and how the DOJ works, it does seem as if this White House has been willing to pursue political persecutions, including many of the accusations and allegations that are being made against Donald Trump. Now, when it comes to the 14th Amendment case against Donald Trump, that got thrown out as a question of whether or not Donald Trump would be legally allowed to run for president of the United States because he was accused by the left of inciting an insurrection, which would have, in theory, made him ineligible under the 14th Amendment, correct?
Well, no, it has not been thrown out. So there's two cases, one in Colorado where they actually had a trial. And that judge hasn't ruled yet. She said she's going to rule before Thanksgiving, which is next Thursday. So we might expect a ruling from her. The one in Minnesota may be the one you're talking about.
I'm talking about Michigan. Trump can stay on GOP primary ballot in Michigan. Yes, Trump to remain on Michigan ballot after judge rejects another 14th Amendment challenge is what I'm reading this morning.
That's because it's the same rationale as in Minnesota. He's not running for office. He's running for the Republican nomination for president, and there's no constitutional prohibition to that. If he gets the nomination, they will then revisit this. Now, my view is, and I think yours and most rational people, he can't be denied the right to run on the basis of allegations only, but only on the basis of a conviction. However, for the originalists among us, for the first years following the 14th Amendment, which prohibits somebody who once took an oath of loyalty to the Constitution, he took that oath when he became president, and then engaged in an insurrection or supported an insurrection. He's been accused of that, but not, I don't think, credibly accused, and certainly not prosecuted. For the first 50 years after the 14th Amendment was ratified, people were barred from office on the basis of far less evidence than we would expect today. The county clerk would say, well, we all knew that Austin supported the Confederacy, so he can't run for the Senate. That was the end of it. Today, in the more modern post-World War II understanding of due process, your right to seek office is a liberty, and that liberty cannot be denied without due process, meaning there would have to be a trial first. So the originalists among us who want today an original understanding of the 14th Amendment are ignoring a century of due process.
Judge Andrew Napolitano is joining us live right now. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. Make sure you click like and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget, of course, to check out Judge Napolitano's excellent show, Judging Freedom, which you can download on any of your podcast sites, as well as watch on YouTube and read his weekly column at judgenap.com. Judge, what was your take on the Supreme Court issuing its very first own rule of ethical guidelines on itself?
It's pabulum. It's too little and it's too late, and it basically says they'll do their best to abide by what they require of other federal judges. It's a constitutional conundrum. Nobody can force them to do this. It would take a constitutional amendment to impose something or some structure on them. But when they say they're going to avoid the appearance of impropriety, they're going to decide what the appearance of impropriety is. So I don't blame them for doing this. Justice Thomas and Justice Alito and Justice Sotomayor, all friends of mine, came under some heat for not revealing gifts that they received. I don't think those gifts influenced their decisions one whit, but it is the appearance, the look of impropriety. The court does not have an army to enforce its decisions. Andrew Jackson famously said of John Marshall's decision involving the Second National Bank of the First National Bank of the United States. John Marshall has made his decision. Now let him enforce it. They don't have an enforcement arm. Their enforcement arm is their moral suasion, the esteem with which they are held in the judiciary, in the legal community, and among the public. When they do things that tarnish that esteem, they reduce their moral suasion, and they reduce their credibility, and they reduce their effectiveness.
These are excellent conversations, Judge. It's just, I love talking about this stuff. It's so nice to have someone who can actually have these conversations. I have to say thank you to our listeners, Studio 314, who says, I'm starting to think these people think they own us. Very funny. And Quest Fanning says, what of all these Congress quitters that swore an oath to the Constitution who crafted unconstitutional laws? Not a bad question. Judge, I want to talk to you about one more topic, and then I'd like to get into big brain time, if you don't mind, because I'd like to talk to you about something, a burning question I've had related to a speech that you gave in Washington, D.C. once to my old institution, Freedom Works, when we talked about you talked about the Bill of Rights and legal positivism, the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. And the reason why it made me think of it was this discussion about being anonymous online. But before we get to that big brain time, Judge, I'd like to talk to you about one more current affair. And this is related to the question of Chinese election interference. Now, when the CIA was created with ostensibly to operate overseas only and not to conduct operations here on the home front. We know that that hasn't been the case. We know that the CIA has overstepped its constitutional boundary. You know, the first president of the United States, George Washington, was a spy, and it was through spycraft that he was able to through his guile and his savvy conduct a legitimate and what I believe to be a just war against the British for the rights and natural rights of the colonies. And it was a lot of that had to do with his experience as a spy in the British Army. So I guess my question to you here is Judge, to some theoretical extent, noting that other governments, communist governments around the world, authoritarian governments around the world, they conduct spying against our country. Is there a legitimate role for spycraft if a nation is doing so, using it for their own self-defense in a theoretical libertarian utopia, if you will, to some sense?
It's a difficult question to answer. I can't answer it with yes or no, but certainly the government has the ability to spy on foreign governments whose announced or pronounced or unannounced but obvious behavior is intended to impair the territorial integrity or the liberty of the United States. That does not mean that they can spy in the United States. It does not mean that they can spy on Americans. The Fourth Amendment, to the not to the chagrin of the intelligence community, because they couldn't care less about it, protects all persons. It's not limited to Americans. It's not limited to loyal Americans. It's not limited to good Americans. It's not limited to good persons. It protects all persons, but it does not reach outside the borders of the United States. So if the Chinese are attempting to get an algorithm from Amazon or Google in order to compete with Amazon or Google, it's none of the federal government's business. Amazon and Google are rich enough to hire their own protection and craft their own protection for this. But if the Chinese are trying to learn military secrets, the United States ought to be up on that and know what they know and frustrate their ability to know it and know who is seeking to obtain it. So I'm sort of skirting the idea. I'm intellectually honest with you. I'm sort of skirting the idea about whether or not the feds can spy in the United States on foreign persons. Theoretically, the answer is yes, but only with a search warrant. But they're never going to bother getting that search warrant. They simply won't. They simply won't do it because Congress is afraid to make them do it.
Was it the legitimate role of the government to shut down the Chinese government setting up police agencies in New York City, for example, in order to police their own citizens within the boundaries of our country? You know which story I'm referring to?
Yeah, I know exactly the story you're referring to. If they're using force and violence, of course, it's against the law. If they're using moral suasion to promote Chinese culture, that's obviously not against the law. They can do it. That's the freedom of speech. But if they are using coercion or force, that is a violation of local and state law, and the feds have nothing to do with it. It doesn't matter if they're Chinese or Italian Americans from Newark, New Jersey, whatever they are. If they're using force or coercion to get somebody to do something against their will, there's local and state law against that.
All right. What we had learned is that many of those practitioners of Falun Gong, which used to stand outside Fox News when we worked there together at News Corp, was that the Chinese government had actually set up a police agency within Manhattan and were using force to shut those protesters down because they were speaking out against the Chinese Communist government.
And the local, state, and federal government have an obligation under the law and the Constitution to protect the rights of Falun Gong to say whatever they want, whether they're protecting it against creeps in the streets that don't like them or against an organized criminal gang known as the Chinese Communist Party that wants to silence them.
It would seem to me, though, Judge, like when it comes to the question of like a private company, I mean, Chinese Communist Party officials, they order the stealing of intellectual property. We can talk about intellectual property perhaps another time, but not just from Amazon, not just from big corporations that can afford it, but from smaller businesses as well. And that's an actual state actor who is acting against private companies and private corporations here. Not everybody can afford to hire a private military contractor for the purpose of defending their intellectual property or secrets from foreign governments.
I'm talking about in the ideal world, you would be able to afford it because the taxes would be so much less because the government would be so much smaller. I mean, in the ideal world, I wouldn't be paying any taxes at all except a user fee. And I wouldn't call the state police if somebody came onto my farm. The insurance company that insures the farm would provide the security for it.
They want your secret maple syrup recipe, Judge. What are you going to do?
They'll never get it.
The Chinese are going to get your maple syrup recipe, Judge. I just know it. And then you'll change your tune on this. All right. One more topic. This is really big brain stuff. And this is why people tune in to hear us talk, Judge, because these conversations don't happen anywhere else in the world, maybe on your own podcast, Judging Freedom. But I'd like to talk to you about a speech that you gave sometimes approximately around the year 2012, 2013 or so, after our show had been canceled by Fox and I went back to work in D.C. You came down to FreedomWorks, you gave a speech in front of an audience, and we broadcasted that speech online. And I sometimes refer to it when trying to remind myself of certain constitutional histories. But you talked about the Federalist Papers, and you talked about the debate that went on in this country that eventually led to the creation of the Constitution, right? The dissolution of the Articles of Confederation and the creation of the Constitution, we the people, as we know it as such today. In that speech, you talk about the battle between the Federalists, the Alexander Hamiltonians, the George Washingtons versus the Anti-Federalists, the Patrick Henrys, and others who were having a fight over this question of how to properly safeguard the natural rights of American citizens. And I apologize for such a big lead up, Judge, but I want to let you kind of rant after this, but I want our listeners to kind of understand the context here. But in this speech, you talk about the question of positivism, legal positivism, which is the concept that rights only exist if they're written down, say the Federalists. The Anti-Federalists disagreed with that, as you explained, Judge, that we have rights that could never be written down, and thus we do have a Ninth Amendment of the Constitution, which in a sense codifies it, although it's sort of a dead letter these days. But the Anti-Federalists, they were quite pragmatic, despite being more of the idealist libertarians like we are today. We very much are that, are the ideological descendants of the Anti-Federalists, you and I. But what they had decided was they said that we know that there are more rights that could ever be written down, but we don't trust the Federalists to protect our rights if we don't write it down. So in some ways, this is sort of a paradox and something that we wrestle with, this question of does a right have to be written down for it to be recognized by the government? Even the anti-federalists who didn't agree with that concept said, we're still going to write the Bill of Rights anyway, and the only way we'll agree to the Constitution is if the Bill of Rights is included in it, thereby sort of negating what they had said, because political realities they knew meant that they had to write down at least some of those natural rights to try and attempt to codify some of those natural rights. So what I'm asking you here, Judge, isn't it important for us as anti-federalists, as libertarians, to sometimes make these kinds of pragmatic moves to protect our liberty, that to sometimes agree that ends must justify the means if the ends are a resulting an expansion of individual liberty? Do you understand what I'm sort of asking here? To
I
some this
understand
paradox.
exactly. It's a huge, huge topic. I could write a book on this topic, and so could you. Look, the anti-federalists were not saints. Their job, their goal was to restrain the federal government. So the same people that voted against the Alien and Sedition Acts permitted prosecution for speech in state courts because there was no prohibition in state constitutions for it. So they believed in natural rights only so far. For the most part, some of them were purists like you and I. The pivotal character in all of this is Madison, who's a hero and a goat, depending upon what time of his life you're talking about. The reason we have a Federal Reserve today is because of James Madison, but the reason we have a Bill of Rights today is because of James Madison. So when Madison, the chair of he's in the House of Representatives at this point, it's Washington's first term in office, 5 of the states have said, we're going to leave if you don't add a Bill of Rights to the Constitution. Interesting, they all assumed that by voluntarily joining the Union, they could voluntarily leave the Union. Gee, I wonder what happened to that assumption between 1790 and 1860. Nothing legally. There was just a monster in office by 1861 who killed them when they wanted to leave. Nevertheless, to keep them from leaving, the Federalists decided, to craft the Bill of Rights, and the anti-federalist member of the House of Representatives from Virginia, whose most famous constituent was Thomas Jefferson, then the Secretary of State, was James Madison. Madison is the chair of the committee to craft the Bill of Rights. The first 8, we all understand. They articulate specific rights that everyone wanted protected. Then comes Madison's crown jewel, how to protect rights without enumerating them. There's a famous argument between 2 law professors where one says, name 10 rights, and I'll name 10 that you forgot to, and then you'll name 10 that I forgot, and then I'll name 10 that you forgot, and we'll be doing this until we're old men, and they're right. So Madison's solution, his crown jewel, is the 9th Amendment, which recognizes the existence of rights. And it basically says the rights enumerated in this Constitution are not exclusive. And those rights retained by people shall not be disparaged by the government. That's the natural law right there. The recognition of universally understood rights acquired by the use and identified by the use of reason. Now, the modern day codifier of the natural law is not James Madison, it's Thomas Aquinas. And Aquinas once likened the natural law to peeling an onion. And as you peel it, you find there's more in there. As society develops, you find there are other rights that the generation before hadn't thought of that are equally as protected by nature as the rights we thought of. So, Nikki Haley, what you want to do is an interference with natural rights, even though James Madison and Thomas Aquinas never imagined it. Now, I don't know if I've given you the full answer in the context of federalist, anti-federalist, but the anti-federalists had much to worry about. Remember, the Federalists enacted the Alien and Sedition Acts, which authorized federal prosecutions for speech.
Judge, so yes, almost. And it's, I'd like to, and I know I'm going a little bit long here. May I have a few more minutes of your time today?
Oh, sure, sure, sure.
Okay, if you need to run, it's okay. But you talk about peeling back the onion, and we're discovering more rights as time goes by. Um, Even though we're not legal positivists per se, it is the case that the Ninth Amendment has largely been a dead letter, that it was supposed to protect these rights that we discovered as we go further in time and we discover more realities. For example, Twitter, social media, things like that had not been invented, but our free speech rights exist in that arena, even though it hadn't been considered by the founding fathers to a certain extent. But the Ninth Amendment was supposed to protect it. But because we have not codified it, meaning we haven't passed a constitutional amendment that says specifically that we should not be forced to submit our driver's licenses to have opinions on social media online, people like Nikki Haley say, well, since they're more Hamiltonians, they're Federalists, they say, well, it doesn't exist, right? If we don't, so I guess what I'm really asking here is Judge, should we be pushing for constitutional amendments to codify these new rights that we learn? Because since the Ninth Amendment is so broad or obtuse, if you will, in defending these rights that we're discovering, should we paradoxically become legal positivists and push for constitutional amendments to defend these rights that we determine and discover, because we know that our enemies who do not agree with us will seek to take away those rights or to abrogate them in some way or another?
It's very tempting to say yes, but I have to say no, because there will be no end to the codification, and the codification will swing with the wind, based upon the prevailing wind of the time, like codifying the right to kill babies in the womb, which is now fashionable, but 30 or 40 or 50 years ago was unthinkable. The problem is with the judiciary. I mean, the last time the Ninth Amendment was articulated is in a concurrence by Justice Arthur Goldberg, a liberal Democrat, in Griswold versus Connecticut, which is the principal privacy case where the state of Connecticut wants to prosecute people for using contraceptive devices in their own homes. And Justice Goldberg, an LBJ appointee, and quite frankly, an LBJ lackey, because he left the Supreme Court to become LBJ's guy at the United Nations. It's inconceivable today, but this happened in my lifetime. Nevertheless, wrote a beautiful and brilliant concurring opinion to Justice Douglas's opinion. Douglas, the most liberal member of the court, an FDR appointee, saying, quite frankly, there is an area of human behavior not reachable by the government. And without listing all of those areas of human behavior, we will say that intimate relations between a husband and a wife, not between two people. Today, it's two people. Doesn't matter if you're married, doesn't matter what the gender is. But at the time, a husband and a wife is beyond the government's reach. And rather than call that natural rights, because it sounds too religious-y, we're going to make up a phrase. We're going to call it substantive due process. Now, the natural rights people on the court, Scalia, Thomas, Gorsuch, they hate the phrase substantive due process. They are not afraid of calling it natural rights. Scalia himself told me he was afraid of using it because he would lose the fifth vote on the court when he was finding a natural right to privacy. So he called it substantive due process. I've gotten a little far afield from your question, but the point is, if the judiciary understood what Madison and all the ratifiers, it's not Madison putting this down people's throat, all the ratifiers understood. I say ratifiers. The Bill of Rights was ratified by conventions in each state. Some states, the convention was the state legislature. Other states, it was a separate convention. New Jersey had 21 different conventions, one for each county, and they counted up all the votes and said, okay, yeah, the Bill of Rights passed unanimously. The ratifiers all understood the peeling the onion analogy, that this would protect rights that we haven't even thought of. So that's my long-winded answer to your very practical question, for the length of which I apologize.
Oh, I had to apologize for the length of my question because I think I spent, almost as much time asking it. Judge, an excellent response. And I'm so thankful that you see these paradoxes as much as I do and are conflicted about them as much as I do. I often feel quite lonely when I can make these considerations because we dwell, unfortunately, in such a realm of extremes that there is such a lack of nuance in modern political discourse, and I think that the lack of nuance comes from just a lack of knowledge. That just a general ignorance of American history, of jurisprudence, of the history of the Constitution and the foundation, what the founding fathers truly believed, not only their beliefs when it came to the role of government, but their own personal histories and how those contributed to the creation of the American Republic, such as it is. I mean, you can really see the idiosyncrasies of the founding fathers themselves writ large in many of the problems that we face today in the American Republic. I have to say thank you to Andy Opperman, who says, in practice, the doctrine of enumerated powers has died long ago. Rights not enumerated are vulnerable to the capricious impulses of those in power. I imagine you must agree with Andy here, Judge.
Well, I don't know this fellow, but he's right, and I agree with him 100%. Look, the Constitution doesn't work anymore. Formally, it exists. Formally, we still have a president who's still elected by an electoral college. We still have a House of Representatives, a Senate, and a judiciary. But functionally, as an instrument of restraining the government, of confining Congress to the 16 unique, discrete powers delegated to it, the Constitution has abysmally failed. Okay, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. Does no law really mean no law? The answer is no, it doesn't. Because Congress does write laws abridging the freedom of speech. Stand outside the Capitol building on January 6th and cheer them on, get prosecuted. Talk to a foreign government about national secrets and get prosecuted. Say something that offends the government and they think your offense is interfering with the governmental function and get prosecuted. So obviously no law doesn't mean no law. But to those of us who believe that the Constitution means what it says, it should.
Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge, thank you for this extended conversation about American history, the Bill of Rights, legal positivism, and natural rights. Judge, will you please tell us a little bit about your show, Judging Freedom, who you have coming up on the program, and give us a sneak preview of your weekly column?
My weekly column is Whatever Happened to the Freedom of Speech, and you and I have discussed some of the incidents involving it. A New Jersey state senator goes to a Philadelphia Eagles game, and he's got a banner that has an American flag and an Israeli flag on it. An hour later, he's being escorted out by the police. Man, if that's not a protected speech at a government-owned building, I don't know what is. The Israeli-Hamas war on college, the PR war on college campuses, is causing each side to want the college to silence the other side because they're encouraging violence. Well, guess what? The Supreme Court protects violent speech and it protects hate speech. That's what my column is about. Whatever happened to the freedom of speech. Today I have Phil Giraldi, ex-CIA, on whatever happened to the enthusiasm about Ukraine. Gone. Wait a minute. I thought the battle in Ukraine was to save the dominoes from falling. All of a sudden, gone. I also have Tony Schaefer, ex-military intelligence, who will say the same. Yesterday, I had Scott Ritter on, and I nicknamed him Mad Dog Ritter because he was going after Netanyahu's jugular as a war criminal. And tomorrow, the great Colonel Douglas McGregor. What do we do about the war crimes in Gaza? You have to be courageous about all this stuff, even though you make enemies, Austin.
Oh, it's true. Trust me. Ever since October 7th, I've had nothing but enemies, it seems, at my gates. Judge, why do people hate the Jews so much?
I guess because the Jews are different and believe in the primacy of the individual. These are views that you and I share. I mean, you and I are, as Christians, the descendants of the Jews. Benedict XVI said salvation comes from the Jews. He meant this: the salvation, the descendants of the Jews. The hatred is a terrible thing, and it does lead to violence, but it's protected by the First Amendment.
Note that many socialists despise Jews. Do you think it's because of their, as Adolf Hitler said, the hatred of Jewish capitalism, the envy of them for their wealth and their ability to move into a country and move up the social ladder so quickly? As Thomas Sowell actually said,
if you hate their wealth, if you envy their wealth, participate in it, buy stock in their businesses, they're generally great business people. turn hatred into money in the bank, or turn envy. Turn envy into money in the bank.
They can't do that, Judge. It's just, when you see all of this in the world today, all this hatred and these old ancient hatreds that haven't gone away, it certainly does lead one, especially going into the holiday season, where these religions start to come to the forefront. It just makes you want to wash your hands of so much of this. But nevertheless, we are committed libertarians. We are dedicated to this fight. We do fight for what we believe in, despite national. I consider myself to be a nationalist, but a libertarian first. I consider myself to be an individualist before anything else. You probably consider yourself to be a Christian first before any of your other allegiances. Are you of that mindset, Judge? How do you sort of
I consider myself, I'm sorry to find any enmity between us. I consider myself a Catholic first, an individualist second, and an American third. But Catholicism does not interfere with my individualism. If it does, I go to confession.
No,
there's the line of the day for you, Austin.
Judge, this conversation has been exquisite. Thank you so much for your guidance. As always, you are certainly the lamp unto my path, as they say. Thank you very much for your time today, and we look forward to seeing you.
God bless you and your bride. And if you're working next week, I'll see you next Wednesday.
Thank you, Judge. See you then. Thanks very much. Have a wonderful day. What do you think of Judge Andrew Napolitano? Send us a text at 573-319-1586. Again, you can text the show at 573-319-1586. That's good stuff. Anthony Alperman says, I feel privileged to be a fly on the wall listening to these two talk on such topics. Big brain time is the best. I'm glad you enjoy that. These are conversations that I wanted to have with Judge Napolitano going years back. But we never had the time. He and I are both such busy individuals that when I worked with Judge Napolitano at the Fox Business Network from 2010 to 2012, we would only have very short, brief snippets of time, sometimes 5, 10, 15 minutes to have these kinds of conversations. But I would always walk away feeling unsatisfied because I was never really able to get into the nitty-gritty details of these questions surrounding the foundation of the American Republic, our Constitution, the idiosyncrasies of the Founding Fathers, the paradoxes of the law, and of the challenges that we face as modern libertarians to be, one, idealists, but also pragmatists in advancing our cause. And this is why I have found myself gravitating over the years towards the more pragmatic style of libertarians, such as Friedrich Hayek or Ludwig von Mises, or especially Milton Friedman, over the more radical anarchist libertarians who I think they lack practicality, but from whom I take inspiration. And I do take inspiration from the radicals of the liberty movement over the years. And I do think that there is something to be learned from Murray Rothbard. But I think ideally the way that I would describe myself is when it comes to moral philosophy, ethical philosophy, legal philosophy, is to describe myself as a cherry picker. And it very much flies in the face of my upbringing, which was to consider things from a Christian perspective, from a fundamentalist view, which is very much a purist view. And certainly some of my ancestors were Puritans. And I understand the desire for purity that many seek, but I think it's a false god in my views. I think that it's utopianism, which is a fantasy. It's not to say that we don't idealize a perfect world in our heads and consider how we might get there in order to make improvements in our world. We have to consider what would be a better world in order for us to be able to take the steps that are necessary to get there. But too much of a focus, in my view, on this utopianism leads one to make many mistakes. It's one of the problems that we see with idealistic communists, for example. Their belief in a utopian world, that a heaven on earth, leads them to create hell on earth. I don't believe that libertarians are immune to making those same logical fallacies and creating problems here on earth that essentially make us all suffer through a living hell. As a matter of fact, many of the pragmatists that I just named, for example, have made major mistakes in implementing what they believe to be better policies to make more libertarian changes in the world. One of the prime examples of that would be Milton Friedman, who in later years of life regretted advocating for income tax withholding. So if you have withholding on your paychecks, that was pioneered and advocated for by Milton Friedman, who helped to institute it, pioneered that idea. And of course, now we all have withholding, and he says that he thinks that it was actually a mistake, a pragmatic solution, which he thinks has actually led to more hell on earth. So it's not to say that pragmatism doesn't have its flaws as well. It certainly does. There are unintended consequences to the real world policies that libertarians, well-meaning libertarians, might try and institute in order to bring about changes. I'm not immune to that, and neither are the idealists of the liberty movement. Just like idealistic communists are not immune to that, as we have seen. But what's the difference between ourselves and communists? What's the difference that I see? The biggest difference of all, I think the biggest difference of all is that communists, socialists, leftists, authoritarians, theocrats, fascists, Islamists, right? These people are willing to fight for their ideals. They're willing to kill for their ideals. They're willing to spill blood. And we, as more pacifistic, less warmongering, less fighters in general, we lose because not only do we not fight, when we fight at all, very rarely, we do not understand the laws and principles of war. My biggest challenge, I believe, as a libertarian, is to convince more libertarians to learn and understand and implement the art of war. Machiavelli, The Prince, is not a book that was written so that bad people could do bad things. Machiavelli's The Prince was written so that good people could know how bad people do bad things in order to take power over all of us, and how we could learn and understand and use the tricks of the trade in order to prevent being ruled by evil people. It would be wise for every libertarian to understand this art of war, to understand real politics, in order for us to be able to fight against the collectivization and centralization of power over the rest of us. This is why when I brought up the conversation with Judge Napolitano about the paradoxes of legal positivism. And just a brief recap, legal positivism is the idea that the only laws that are valid laws are laws that are written down. We talked about the Ninth Amendment here today, the question of whether or not there are more rights than could possibly ever be written down. So the question is this: if we believe that there are more rights that exist that could possibly be written down, then how do we, as people who are not legal positivists, how do we ensure the protection of our individual rights against people who believe that the only laws that are valid laws are the laws that are written down? And also consider the viewpoints of people that disagree with us. Think about this from a legal positivist perspective. How can you, as a police officer, if your job is to enforce laws, How can you enforce a law that's not written down? This is why cops, courts, militaries, this is why government exists, because of the creation of fundamental written laws that everyone can see, that can be neutrally interpreted, and can be implemented amongst a population who consent to be governed. So, how do we deal with these paradoxes? The question of these paradoxes is how we really fight to protect our rights and our liberty. Do we, as the judge said he was tempted to do we, when we find new rights, when we peel the onion, as he describes, do we find these rights and then codify them into law, knowing that if we do not do so, that the people who oppose us, the Federalists, the legal positivists, that they will not respect those rights, that they will work against those rights because they aren't written down. They aren't written down on a piece of paper and can therefore be easily enforced. But we have found that there is a right that exists that wasn't written down. And it's the one that Nikki Haley is trying to take away, that we have to register ourselves and our driver's licenses, and we can no longer be anonymous on social media. That is obviously, it is a right to be anonymous on social media. But that right isn't protected. It's not protected because, and it's under threat because it's not written down. Now, the judge's argument was to say that the reason why he doesn't think that we should write that down or pass that as a constitutional amendment is because he thinks that there will be no end to the amount of perfidy, the perfidious Albion. There will be no end to the amount of laws that people will attempt to pass as rights that are not truly rights. Universal basic income, for example, right? The redistribution of wealth, for example, government mandated time off, for example, right? Government mandated maternity leave, for example. Are these rights? Some people think they are. And if you were to give power to the majority, the great majority of people in this country, they would probably pass laws that would be for rights that they claim that exist that you and I don't agree exist. Aren't these truly wonderful and dangerous and terrifying paradoxes that we find ourselves dealing with here in this country? Isn't this really what we're really struggling against if we truly believe in individualism? And I am obviously not a Catholic like the judge who puts his first, so I'm an individualist first, a secularist second, and a nationalist third. And so that means that my loyalties lie with individual liberty first. So how do people like myself gather together, marshal the forces that are necessary to institute a protection of the rights that are not protected as they are right now? How do we fight back? Well, my answer to this is first, before you can fight back, you must learn to fight. Very big brain this second hour. Today is the day to get your coffee orders in. Thank you to Andy Opperman, made a big coffee order today. You're going to get your special coffee very soon in the mail. Also, you signed up for a monthly subscription. Thank you, Andy. You're a huge supporter of the Wake Up America show and a good friend. Thank you. Stephanie and I thank you. I thank you. My mother thanks you. My father thanks you. And I thank you. Today is the day to get some coffee. We've got a special surprise for those of you who ordered either yesterday or starting today. If you've ordered from us before, you're going to notice a slight change. Still the same delicious coffee that you can expect, but something new and unique that I think you're really going to enjoy. We don't have K-Cups yet, but those are coming. We do have one new change for the coffee for everyone who orders it starting today. Thank you to Drummer Goy. Thank you to Joni Rankin. Joni, I'll send you your $5 gift certificate after the show is over. My lovely wife, Stephanie, I will be home very soon. Hot Water 84 joining us. I know you're a monthly supporter. Thank you, Hot Water. Andy Opperman, C. Songaroth, Brindle Bear, Grover Bentley, Quest Fanning joining us today, as well as Barney Stiles. Nice to see you all here. Studio 314. Kermode Bear was here with us earlier as well as David Lee, 180. Quest fanning, many of our other friends, but I didn't say your name today. Thank you very much. I appreciate you all. Yes, the rest is gifts. Oh, Andy, they're going to love this gift when they see it. It's going to be a nice little surprise for you. I can't wait for people to see it. I've got mine coming in soon. I'm not going to talk about it or show you guys what it is, although it is possible for you to find out right now what the difference is. But I'm going to wait until I get mine in here to bring them out on set and show you. I think you're going to love it. Joni Rankin, I'm proud to be a part of this show. I'm glad to have you here. Joni, I'm proud to be your friend. Good job on the Guys Indulge reference earlier. Head over to ap4libertyshop.com. Get yourself some delicious coffee. Buy a bunch for your friends and your family. Give them out as Christmas gifts. They're going to love them. I promise it, especially if they love America like we do, especially if they love economic freedom and personal liberty. We'll see you tomorrow right here on the show, the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Expanse of time, a year might seem like a mere moment, but oh, what a year it's been. In September 2022, Austin and Stephanie Peterson embarked on a journey to wake up America. They began humbly, with just 20 souls tuning in, learning, listening, and though challenges arose, like the looming shadow of YouTube demonetization, their spirit never waned. And now, thanks to you, thousands rise with the sun to join them, to listen, to engage, to be a part of a community. So here's to you, and to Wake Up America, for memories shared, for friends made, for the journey ahead, and for never, ever forgetting to rise and freedom. Happy anniversary.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message. Believe me, Austin Peterson is the best. He's got the greatest Wake Up America show I've ever seen. Whenever I tune in the mornings and watch the live stream, let me tell you, he has got the absolute best content. I love his guests. It's just a total blast to watch, and I highly endorse and recommend the Wake Up America show. It's terrific, believe me.
I'm a public defender.
I am a public defender.
I'm proud to be a public defender.
80% of Americans accused of a crime will get appointed a public defender.
Everybody from a speeding ticket to capital murder.
For every dollar we spend on public defenders, we spend $3 on prosecutors.
Public defenders have to do pretty much everything on their own.
Social workers, counselors.
Investigating is another piece of it.
The average public defender holds 300 cases annually.